In the crowded streets of Manila, where jeepneys honk and vendors call out to sell their goods, a man named Rico de la Cruz stood on a corner with an old microphone and a battered speaker. He wasn't a beggar, nor just a street performer, he was a man chasing a dream that seemed impossible. Every evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Rico put on his faded Elvis jacket, slicked back his hair with cheap gel, and began to sing. His voice floated through the humid air, deep and soulful, echoing the spirit of the king himself. People walking by stopped in their tracks, stunned by how much he sounded like Elvis Presley. Children clapped, couples smiled, and even tired workers paused to listen. When he sang, "Can't Help Falling in Love," his voice carried both strength and sadness, and it felt like Elvis had come alive again, right there on the streets of the Philippines. Rico wasn't rich. He lived in a small room with peeling walls and a single light bulb, but music gave him something money never could: hope. One day, a foreign tourist walking through Manila stopped to film him. "Man, you sound just like Elvis," he said in disbelief. Rico just smiled shyly and kept singing. The tourist posted the video online with the caption, "Elvis Lives in the Philippines." Overnight, the video went viral. Within days, it was shared millions of times. People from all over the world commented, saying they couldn't believe how authentic he sounded. Some called him the Filipino Elvis, others said, "Simon Cowell needs to hear this guy." Rico didn't even own a smartphone, but when a friend showed him the video, his hands trembled. His face lit up with a mixture of shock and joy. That night, he whispered a prayer, thanking his mother, who had passed away years before, for giving him the courage to sing. The next morning, something extraordinary happened. A message came through from a casting director for America's Got Talent. They had seen his viral video and wanted him to audition. Rico could hardly breathe. He had never been on a plane before, never even left Manila, but this was his chance. Weeks later, with borrowed money and a small suitcase, Rico landed in Los Angeles. The bright lights, huge buildings, and unfamiliar faces made him nervous, but deep down, he felt ready. As he stood backstage at the AGT studio, he clutched the small photo of his mother in his hand, whispering, "This is for you." The stage looked massive compared to the streets he was used to performing on. When it was finally his turn, he walked out with his head slightly bowed, wearing a plain black shirt and a vintage jacket. Simon Cowell, seated at the judge's table, gave him a curious look. "What's your name and what do you do?" Simon asked. Rico took a deep breath. "My name is Rico de la Cruz. I'm from the Philippines, and I sing Elvis songs," he said in a humble tone. A few people in the crowd giggled softly, assuming it was just another impersonation act. Rico closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing, "Suspicious Minds." The first note changed everything. His voice was rich and powerful, echoing across the hall with the unmistakable depth of Elvis Presley himself. The laughter faded, replaced by stunned silence. His hips swayed naturally, his voice rose and fell with perfect control, and when he hit the final high note, the audience erupted. People stood on their feet, clapping and cheering. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his mouth slightly open, and said, "Oh my God, that was unbelievable." Rico's heart pounded as tears filled his eyes. For a man who once sang to survive, he was now standing before millions, making them believe in magic again. When the applause finally slowed, Simon smiled and said, "You, my friend, didn't just sing like Elvis, you brought him back to life." Rico smiled through tears, bowing deeply as the audience chanted his name. For the first time, the boy from the streets of Manila realized his dream wasn't impossible after all. It was only just beginning. The day after Rico's audition aired, the world exploded with excitement. His performance clip spread across every social media platform, from YouTube to TikTok, gathering millions of views in just hours. People couldn't stop talking about the man who sang like Elvis but came from the streets of Manila. Filipino Elvis shocks the world, trended in dozens of countries. News outlets picked up the story, fans made reaction videos, and celebrities praised his voice. Even Priscilla Presley shared a clip on her page, writing, "Elvis would have loved this man's heart." Rico woke up in his small hotel room to hundreds of messages. Reporters were calling, producers wanted interviews, and people from his hometown in the Philippines sent videos of celebrations. Kids danced in the streets shouting, "Rico on TV." But amid all the attention, Rico stayed humble. He still called his father every night, saying, "Pa, I'm just doing my best." He knew his mother would have been proud, and that thought gave him strength. Days passed quickly as the competition moved toward the next round. Rico practiced endlessly, trying to perfect his performance. But fame came with pressure. Outside his hotel, fans waited for photos. Some journalists questioned if his voice was real. Rumors spread that he lip-synced. It hurt him deeply. "They don't know how long I've sung on the streets," he whispered to himself. Simon Cowell, seeing Rico's stress, visited him backstage before the next show. "Don't let the noise get to you," Simon told him. "The world finally sees what I saw that night." Rico nodded, but inside, he felt the weight of expectation. During the quarter-finals, he performed, "Burning Love," moving across the stage with charisma and soul. The crowd cheered, the judges smiled, and Simon stood up clapping, shouting, "That's a star right there." After the show, Rico's face was everywhere again, on magazines, talk shows, and online news. Yet, despite the fame, he sometimes felt lost. He wasn't sure if people loved him or just the memory of Elvis through him. Still, he pushed forward, determined to make his next performance more personal, something that truly belonged to him. As the semi-finals approached, Rico's excitement turned into doubt. Comments online began to shift. Some fans adored him, but others said he was nothing more than an Elvis impersonator. "He's just copying," one comment read. "Where's his originality?" Rico tried not to read them, but he couldn't stop. The words stung. He looked in the mirror one night and asked himself, "Who am I if I only sound like someone else?" For the first time since coming to America, he felt unsure. During rehearsals, he struggled to find the right tone. The pressure grew until he nearly broke down. That night, sitting alone, he pulled out his mother's photo and remembered what she once said, "It's not about who you sound like, it's about who you sing for." Those words lit something inside him. The next morning, he met the show's music director and asked to change his song. Instead of another famous hit, he wanted to sing, "If I Can Dream." The song was still Elvis, but it carried a message that fit his journey: hope, equality, and belief in a better tomorrow. When the night of the semi-finals arrived, Rico stepped onto the stage in a simple white suit, his hands trembling slightly. The lights dimmed, and as the first chords played, he sang not as Elvis, but as Rico. His voice still carried that rich tone, but now there was something deeper, something raw. Every lyric poured straight from his heart. The audience went silent, mesmerized. Midway through the song, a single tear rolled down his cheek, but he kept singing. When he hit the final note, the entire theater erupted in applause. Simon Cowell stood up slowly, clapping with emotion in his eyes. "That," he said, "wasn't an imitation, that was you." Rico covered his face, overwhelmed. For the first time, he wasn't just the Filipino Elvis, he was Rico Dela Cruz, the man who found his own voice. That night, the world didn't just hear a singer, they felt a story of pain, hope, and transformation echo through every note. The finale night arrived with tension in the air and lights brighter than ever. Rico stood backstage, listening to the roar of the crowd, his heart pounding like a drum. This was the moment he had dreamed of since he was a little boy singing on the streets of Manila. The producers, the crew, and even the judges could feel something special about that night. Rico had chosen the song that started it all, "Can't Help Falling in Love." It was the same song that had once echoed through the humid streets of his city, the same one that went viral and changed his life. But tonight, he wasn't singing for fame or applause. He was singing for his mother, for his country, and for every dreamer who had ever been told they weren't good enough. Dressed in a simple white suit with a silver scarf, Rico took a deep breath as the stage doors opened. The lights hit his face, and the audience erupted in cheers. He smiled nervously, then looked up and whispered, "This is for you, Mama." The music began softly, and Rico's voice floated like silk through the air. His tone was warm, heartfelt, every note soaked in emotion. The stage behind him glowed with images of his journey, clips of his street performances, his viral moment, his earlier auditions. The crowd was silent, completely drawn in. As he reached the chorus, the big screen showed pictures of Elvis and then faded into images of Filipino children singing and laughing. Rico's voice quivered with sincerity as he sang the final line. When the last note ended, there was a beat of silence before the audience exploded into cheers. People stood up, crying, waving flags of the Philippines. Heidi and Howie applauded wildly, but Simon Cowell's reaction stunned everyone. He stood up slowly, tears in his eyes, and then pressed the golden buzzer, again. The rules said he wasn't supposed to, but in that moment, Simon didn't care. Golden confetti rained from above, falling around Rico like stardust. Rico dropped to his knees, covering his face, shaking with disbelief. Simon walked to the stage and said, "I had to do it. That was more than a performance, it was history. You didn't just honor Elvis, you honored the whole world with your heart." The audience chanted his name as he looked out, smiling through tears. For the boy from the streets of Manila, this was beyond winning. It was a dream fulfilled. Weeks later, Rico was no longer just a contestant, he was an international sensation. Offers came from Las Vegas, from music producers, and even from Hollywood directors who wanted to tell his story. He traveled around the world performing to packed audiences, his shows filled with love, laughter, and the timeless voice that brought Elvis back to life. But fame never changed him. He always remembered where he came from. In interviews, he spoke humbly, saying, "I was just a boy with a voice and a dream." One day, after a concert in Los Angeles, Rico made a decision that shocked everyone. He announced he was going back home to the Philippines. He said he wanted to give back to the community that raised him. When he returned, thousands greeted him at the airport, waving banners and singing his songs. Instead of chasing luxury, Rico used his earnings to open a small music school for underprivileged children. He named it Dream Notes Academy. The walls were decorated with pictures of Elvis, his mother, and his journey on AGT. He taught kids how to sing, how to find confidence, and how to believe in their own voices. Months later, Simon Cowell flew to Manila to surprise him. Cameras followed as Simon arrived at the school, watching children sing in English and Tagalog, smiling brightly. Rico turned around and froze when he saw Simon walking in with a guitar and a donation of new instruments. Simon laughed and said, "I told you, Rico, you're not done inspiring the world yet." Rico hugged him tightly, thanking him for changing his life. That evening, as the sun set over the city, Rico gathered his students and sang, "My Way." His voice carried across the rooftops, blending with the laughter of children. It was no longer about fame or imitation, it was about legacy. The camera panned out, showing the city lights of Manila twinkling like stars. Rico's journey had come full circle, from the streets to the world stage, from a dreamer to an inspiration. The Filipino Elvis had found his own voice, and through it, he had given the world a reason to believe that dreams, no matter how far, are always within reach if you dare to sing them aloud.